Kuwait, February 1991. The desert stretched endless in every direction, a sea of sand painted gold by the afternoon sun. Heat shimmered off the dunes like liquid glass. The taste of dust and diesel fuel hung thick in the air. Corporal Marcus Brennan crouched behind the burned-out hull of a T-72 tank, his M16 pressed tight against his shoulder. 29 years old, 6 months into Operation Desert Storm, already feeling like 60. Beside him, Sergeant Wyatt Sullivan checked his magazine. 27 with a laugh loud enough to wake the dead, and eyes that never stopped looking out for his men. On his helmet taped carefully a photograph. His sister Evelyn, smiling, young, safe back home in Arizona. The radio crackled, static and voices speaking in urgent tones. Marcus called in grid coordinates for an airstrike, double-checking the numbers before transmitting. The response came back, coordinates confirmed. Strike inbound, close, maybe too close. But orders were orders. Wyatt looked at Marcus, nodded once. That nod meant everything between brothers who'd bled together. It meant I've got your back. It meant let's get home alive. They moved. The whistle came without warning. A sound Marcus would hear in his nightmares for the next 33 years. High-pitched, cutting through the desert air like God's own judgment. Rocket-propelled grenade. Time didn't slow down like they say in movies. It compressed, shattered into fragments of moments too fast to process but too vivid to ever forget. Wyatt's eyes went wide, not with fear, with calculation. He saw where the RPG would land, saw Marcus frozen for one critical second, made his choice in the space between heartbeats. Wyatt slammed into Marcus like a linebacker, drove him backward behind the tank's steel hull. The impact knocked the air from Marcus's lungs. The explosion came next, a wall of force and fire and shrapnel. The sound wasn't just loud, it was physical. It entered your chest and rewrote your heartbeat. Marcus hit the sand hard, ears ringing, vision blurred, tasted copper and dust. Then he saw Wyatt. His brother lay 3 feet away, on his back, staring up at the sky that had just tried to kill them both. Blood spread across the sand, dark red against pale gold. Too much blood, far too much. Marcus crawled to him. His hands found the wounds. Shrapnel had torn through Wyatt's neck, his chest, places where blood should stay inside but was now pouring out like water through a broken dam. Hawk. Marcus pressed his hands against the wounds, uselessly. Hawk, stay with me. Wyatt's hand found Marcus's wrist, gripped it, still strong despite everything. Steel. His voice was wet, bubbling, wrong. Listen, promise me. Don't talk. Medic's coming. You're gonna be fine. Liar. Wyatt smiled, blood on his teeth. You were always a terrible liar. 7 minutes. That's how long it took Wyatt Sullivan to die. 7 minutes of Marcus holding him, pressing against wounds that wouldn't close, watching the light fade from eyes that had always been too kind for war. Find Evelyn. Wyatt's voice grew softer with each word, each breath a battle he was losing. My sister. Find her. Protect her. I will, I swear. Don't let her be alone, like Mama was. Promise me, brother. I promise, on my life, Hawk, I promise. Wyatt's grip loosened. His eyes found something far away that Marcus couldn't see. Something beyond the desert, beyond the war, maybe home. Good man Steele, best man I know. Then nothing, just the wind, the distant sound of engines, the weight of a promise that would take 33 years to keep. The nightmare always ended the same way, with Marcus holding Wyatt's dog tags, feeling their weight, lighter than air, heavier than mountains. Flagstaff, Arizona, May 2024, 4:30 in the morning. Marcus Brennan sat up on the cot drenched in sweat. His hands shook, not from age, from the dream that never stopped coming. 62 years old now, 33 years since Kuwait. The math was cruel in its simplicity. He lived in his garage, Had for 4 years. Ever since Caroline died. Ever since cancer took the one person who'd made the empty house next door feel like home. The garage was enough. Concrete floor, smell of motor oil and leather. His Harley Fat Boy parked in the center like a chrome and steel shrine to everything he had lost and everything he was still trying to find. The clock glowed green in the darkness. 4:30. Same time every morning. The nightmare kept schedule better than any alarm. Marcus stood. His knees protested. 62 wasn't old by modern standards, but the body kept score. Every mission, every fight, every mile on the road, they all added up written in scar tissue and arthritis that flared when the desert nights got cold. He walked to the workbench, bare feet silent on cold concrete. The morning ritual never changed. Coffee first, strong and black the way they drank it in the field when dawn meant another day of surviving. While the ancient percolator bubbled and hissed, he opened the small wooden box on the shelf. Inside, wrapped in a faded American flag, were Wyatt's dog tags. Sullivan Wyatt J. 367448281. OUSMC. Christian Marcus lifted them out, felt their weight, lighter than the promise they represented, heavier than anything else he'd ever carried. Still looking hawk, his voice was rough in the empty garage. Still keeping my word. The wall above the workbench, it was a gallery of ghosts. Wyatt in dress blues, Sergeant Stripes sharp and proud. That smile that could light up a room. Caroline on their wedding day, 1995. Her smile bright enough to chase away the darkness that had been creeping into Marcus's soul since Kuwait. His purple heart in a shadow box. The metal felt like mockery. He'd gotten it for wounds that healed. Wyatt had taken the wounds that killed. The folded flag from Caroline's funeral. 4 years ago this August, another promise broken. He'd told her he'd grow old with her. Cancer had other plans. And the map. A large map of Arizona covered in red X marks. Every wrong address, every false lead, every Evelyn Sullivan or Evelyn Hartwell he'd tracked down over 20 years of searching. 217 X marks. 217 failures. Marcus poured coffee into a chip mug that read Semper Fi. Walked outside into the high desert morning. The sky was beginning to lighten from black to deep purple. Stars still hung overhead, ancient and indifferent to the struggles of men below. He sat on the Harley seat, warmed his hands on the mug, watched the sun prepare to rise over the mountains. This was his church now. The open sky, the smell of sage and creosote, the eternal patience of the desert that had watched civilizations come and go and would be here long after he was dust. His phone buzzed. Text from Dutch. Chapter meeting. 10 a.m. important. Marcus typed back one word. Roger. He finished his coffee as the sun crested the rim, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Colors that reminded him of fire, of explosions, of the last thing Wyatt saw before the light left his eyes. Inside, Marcus dressed in his usual uniform. Jeans worn soft from 1,000 rides. Boots that had walked through 3 countries in 48 states. Black t-shirt, and finally the cut. The leather vest with the Hells Angels 3-piece patch on the back. Top rocker Hells Angels. Center patch the winged death's head. The skull with wings that marked him as a member of the most notorious motorcycle club in the world. Bottom Rocker, Arizona. He'd earned this patch 15 years ago, 2009, when he'd finally come home from the wars, both foreign and the ones inside his head, and found brotherhood again. Different than the Marines, but no less real, no less binding. Marcus strapped on his knife, a KA-bar Marine combat knife he'd carried since Kuwait. Checked his phone, his wallet, his keys. The ritual of preparing for the day unchanged since his first combat deployment. He kicked the Harley to life. The engine caught with a roar that shook the garage walls. A sound that never got old. Pure power, controlled and directed. The mechanical heartbeat that had become more reliable than his own. 30 miles away in a single wide trailer on rented land, Evelyn Hartwell woke to the sound of her alarm. 5 o'clock, same time for 40 years, 78 years old, silver hair that she pulled back into a neat bun, hands weathered by decades of hard work, back that ached more with each passing year. She dressed in the dark, simple dress and apron, comfortable shoes that had been resold more times than she could count. The trailer was small, cramped, all she could afford on a waitress's salary after Robert died and left her with nothing but his flag and his demons. On the nightstand, a photograph. Robert in his army uniform. 1970, Vietnam. He'd come home in 1972 with a Purple Heart and nightmares that alcohol couldn't drown but killed him trying. Beside that, in another photo, her son Michael, 35 in that picture, smiling before the pills, before the theft, before he disappeared 3 years ago, with what little money she had left. And one more photograph, older, faded, her brother Wyatt in his marine dress blues, 1990, 1 year before Kuwait took him from her forever. Evelyn touched the frame lightly, a ritual, a prayer to ghosts who never answered. She walked the half-mile to work. Her car had died 2 months ago. No money to fix it. The morning was cold. Arizona nights dropped temperatures fast in May. Ruby's Diner sat at the intersection of Route 66 and a county road that led nowhere in particular, perfect for the kind of people who stopped there. Travelers, truckers, locals who liked their coffee strong and their conversations simple. The neon sign flickered. Ruby's Diner, since 1962, the year Evelyn was born. She'd worked here 40 years. Started in 1984 when Robert came back from his second tour with demons in his eyes and a Purple Heart that didn't pay the bills. She unlocked the door, turned on the lights, started the coffee. The routine never changed. Consistency was survival. Ruby arrived at 5:30, 55 years old, perpetually optimistic in ways Evelyn had forgotten how to be. "Morning, Evie." "Morning. You sleep okay?" Evelyn didn't answer. She never slept okay. Hadn't for 33 years. The first customers arrived at 6. Truckers mostly. Men who lived on the road and appreciated a woman who could pour coffee without small talk. Evelyn served them, smiled when appropriate, kept moving. Work was what kept her from thinking too much about all the people who'd left and never come back. Wyatt, her big brother, her protector, gone 33 years in a desert war that seemed meaningless now. Robert, her husband of 40 years, the gentleman who'd survived Vietnam only to lose his battle with the bottle and the memories. Gone 12 years. Michael, her son, gone in a different way, lost to addiction and anger. Last seen 3 years ago when he'd stolen what little money she had left and disappeared into the night. So she worked. She smiled. She refilled coffee cups and pretended her feet didn't hurt, that her back didn't ache, that her heart wasn't a museum of losses. At 9:45, Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. Probably spam. He almost didn't answer. Something made him pick up. "Mr. Brennan," a woman's voice, professional, slightly apologetic. "This is Jennifer Rodriguez from Fine People Services. You contracted with us 6 months ago to locate an Evelyn Sullivan, later possibly Evelyn Hartwell." Marcus's heart stopped, started again faster. "I remember. Sir, I think we found her." The world narrowed to a point. The clubhouse around him faded. The photographs of brothers past and present blurred. There was only the voice on the phone and the rushing sound of blood in his ears. "You're sure?" 95%. Evelyn Marie Sullivan, born 1946, married Robert Hartwell in 1972, widowed in 2012. Currently residing in Flagstaff, Arizona, works as a waitress at Ruby's Diner on Route 66. Flagstaff, the same city he'd lived in for 15 years. She'd been here, this close, and he'd never known. "Mr. Brennan, are you still there?" Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you so much. He hung up, opened his email with shaking hands. There it was, the report, and a photograph. An elderly woman with silver hair pulled back in a bun, blue eyes that looked hauntingly familiar. Wyatt's eyes, his sister's eyes. After 33 years of searching, after 217 dead ends, after 2 decades of carrying a promise that had become a stone around his neck, he'd found her. Marcus sat down heavily on the clubhouse steps, the phone still in his hand, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The chapter meeting was already in progress when Marcus arrived. 11 men sat around the scarred wooden table. These were the patched members, full members, men who'd earned the right to wear the three-piece patch and call themselves Hell's Angels. At the head of the table sat Dutch Vance, 68 years old with a gray beard that reached his chest and arms covered in tattoos that told stories of 5 decades on the road. Former Green Beret, the kind of man who had seen the elephant and never flinched. Ironside, Dutch nodded as Marcus entered. We were just about to start. Marcus took his seat. Bishop poured him coffee without being asked. That was the thing about real brotherhood. You learned the small kindnesses that said more than words ever could. Dutch stood. His presence commanded attention without effort. Brothers, I called this meeting because we've got a situation developing. Word on the street is the outcasts are looking to expand territory. They've been sniffing around our runs, testing boundaries. The outcasts, a rival club, younger, hungrier, dangerous because they had nothing to lose. We sending a message? Bishop asked. His scarred knuckles tapped the table. Dutch shook his head. Not yet. We watch, we wait. We don't start wars, we don't have to fight, but we prepare for the ones that come to us. The meeting continued. Chapter business, upcoming runs, maintenance on the clubhouse, the ordinary operations of a brotherhood that functioned like a family, a military unit, and a corporation all at once. Marcus listened, contributed when needed, but his mind kept drifting to the photograph, to Wyatt's sister, to the promise he'd made and still hadn't kept. After the meeting broke up, Dutch pulled Marcus aside. You're distracted, brother. Marcus met the older man's eyes. Dutch had been his sponsor when he'd prospected for the club 15 years ago, had vouched for him, stood beside him through the year-long proving ground that separated those who wanted to wear the patch from those who deserved it. It's the same thing it's always been, Reaper. The promise. Dutch nodded slowly. Wyatt's sister, you still looking? Every day of my life. Marcus paused. I found her this morning. Investigator called. She's here, in Flagstaff. Been here 15 years. Dutch studied him for a long moment. Then go to her brother. Keep your word. What if she doesn't want to see me? What if I'm 33 years too late? Then at least you'll know you tried. A promise doesn't have an expiration date. Not for a Marine, not for a brother. Marcus stood alone in the parking lot after Dutch left. The sun was high now. Hot. The kind of heat that made the asphalt shimmer. He pulled out his phone, looked at the photograph of Evelyn again. Ruby's Diner, Route 66, 20 minutes away, 33 years of searching, 217 failures, and she'd been 20 minutes away for 15 years. Marcus kicked his Harley to life. The engine's roar was a prayer, a battle cry, a promise about to be kept. The ride took 18 minutes. He could have done it faster, but his hands were shaking on the handlebars. Ruby's Diner appeared on the horizon, neon sign flickering in the daylight, a handful of cars in the parking lot. Normal Tuesday afternoon. Marcus parked away from the entrance, sat on his bike, tried to calm his breathing. What would he say? How do you explain 33 years? How do you apologize for being too late? He thought of Wyatt, those last 7 minutes, the promise made in blood and sand. Marcus dismounted, walked to the door. His reflection stared back from the glass. 62 years old, Hell's Angels cut, scar running from collarbone to brow, looking like everything the movies said to fear. But his eyes told a different story. They were the eyes of a man who'd carried a promise for 33 years and refused to let it die. He pushed open the door. The lunch rush had ended. Only two customers remained: a trucker reading a newspaper, an elderly couple sharing a piece of pie. Behind the counter, a woman with silver hair was wiping down the surface. Her back was to him. Marcus walked to the counter, sat down on a stool. She turned. Blue eyes, Wyatt's eyes, older now, tired, but unmistakable. Time stopped. Coffee. Her voice was professional, practiced. The voice of someone who'd said those words 10,000 times. Marcus's throat was dry. Please. She poured him a cup. Her hands were steady despite the way she was looking at him, taking in the cut, the patch, the scar, making calculations about danger. Cream or sugar? Black, thank you, ma'am. She set the cup in front of him, started to turn away. Marcus reached into his vest pocket, slowly, carefully, showing her his movements so she wouldn't be afraid. He pulled out something small and metal, laid it on the counter between them. Dog tags. Sullivan, Wyatt, J. Evelyn's eyes went to the tags. Her face went white. The coffee pot in her hand started to shake. Where did you get those? Her voice was barely a whisper. Kuwait, 1991, Operation Desert Storm. She gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white. The coffee pot trembled in her hand. Your brother saved my life. Marcus kept his voice soft, steady. His name was Wyatt Sullivan. He called you Dot, short for Dorothy, your middle name. He said you hated it, but he loved to tease you. The coffee pot slipped from Evelyn's hands. It shattered on the floor, hot coffee spreading like the blood Marcus had tried to stop 33 years ago. He made me promise, Marcus continued, with his dying breath. He made me promise to find you, to protect you. Evelyn's legs buckled. She caught herself on the counter, tears streaming down her face. 33 years of grief breaking through the dam she'd built to survive. You're lying. The words came out broken. But even as she said them, she knew he wasn't, because she could see Wyatt in this man's eyes, could see the shadow of her brother, the echo of a promise made in a desert half a world away. Marcus stood slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. He said you made the best apple pie in Arizona, said you used to sneak him extra slices when your mama wasn't looking. He carried your picture in his helmet, looked at it every morning before patrols. Stop. Evelyn's voice cracked. Just stop. Ruby appeared from the kitchen, drawn by the sound of breaking glass. She took in the scene, Evelyn crying, the stranger, the shattered coffee pot. Evie, you okay? Evelyn didn't answer, couldn't answer. 33 years of waiting, of wondering, of pretending she'd stopped hoping someone would come. And now he was here. Too late, far too late. Why, she asked, her voice shaking with rage and grief and decades of abandonment. Why now? Why did it take you 33 years? And there it was, the question Marcus had been dreading, the answer he had no good way to give. I looked. His voice was quiet, raw. God help me, I looked. 20 years, 200 cities, every Evelyn Sullivan, every Evelyn Hartwell, wrong addresses, dead ends, people who'd moved or died or never existed. He pulled out his phone, showed her the map, 217 red X marks. I never stopped looking. I swear to you, I never stopped. Evelyn stared at the map, at the evidence of his searching, and felt something she hadn't felt in decades. Rage, pure, burning, rage. 33 years. Each word was ice. Do you know what happened to me in 33 years? Marcus stood there, silent, because there was nothing he could say that would make it right. My husband came back from Vietnam broken, drank himself to death trying to forget what he'd seen. I lost our house, lost everything. Had to work 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Her voice grew stronger, angrier. My son, my beautiful boy, got addicted to pills after a car accident, stole from me, hit me, disappeared 3 years ago. And you were supposed to be there. Wyatt said if anything happened to him, you would be there. Each word was a blow. Marcus took them, stood there and absorbed them. Because she was right, he'd failed. The reasons didn't matter. The trying didn't matter. He'd made a promise and broken it by being too late. You're right, he said simply. I failed him. I failed you. And I'll carry that the rest of my life. He pulled out his wallet, left a $20 bill on the counter. For coffee he hadn't drunk. If you ever need anything, he wrote his number on the bill. Anything at all, I'm here now. Marcus turned, walked to the door. Each step felt like walking through sand, like Kuwait all over again. Wait, he stopped, hand on the door. What was his last words, Wyatt? What were his last words? Marcus turned back, met her eyes, those blue eyes that were her brother's eyes. He said, don't let her be alone like Mama was. Promise me, brother. And I said, I promise. On my life. Evelyn's tears fell silent now. The rage spent, leaving only the grief underneath. Take your dog tags. Her voice was hollow. And go. I survived this long without you. I'll survive the rest. Marcus picked up the dog tags, put them back in his pocket, next to his heart, where they'd lived for 33 years. I'm sorry, he said. Sorrier than you'll ever know. Then he walked out. The door chimed behind him. The Harley roared to life, and Evelyn stood in the empty diner surrounded by broken glass and broken promises, wondering why God was cruel enough to send help 33 years too late. That night, alone in her trailer, Evelyn took out the box she kept under her bed. Inside were Wyatt's letters from Kuwait. His last one, written 3 days before he died, was worn soft from reading. Dotted said in his familiar handwriting, if something happens to me, find Marcus Brennan. He's the best man I know. He'll take care of you. I made him promise. Trust him like you trust me. Love your brother Hawk. She'd waited for Marcus, waited through her 20s and 30s, waited through Robert's decline and death, waited until waiting became a habit and then a bitter joke. And now he'd come, 33 years too late. Evelyn put the letter away, turned off the light. Outside, sitting on his Harley in the shadows of the parking lot, Marcus watched her trailer. Not close enough to violate her wish to be left alone. Not far enough to fail if something happened. He'd failed Wyatt once by being too late. He wouldn't fail again. Even if Evelyn Hartwell never wanted to see him again, he would keep his promise. He would protect her from the shadows, from the distance, however she needed. Because a promise made to a dying brother was a debt that could never be fully paid, only honored, one day at a time, for the rest of his life. The high desert night was cold. Stars blazed overhead, indifferent and eternal. And in the darkness between the trailer and the road, a promise 33 years old continued its vigil, waiting, watching, refusing to die. This was the fourth night Marcus had come, not close enough to be seen, not far enough to fail if something happened. He'd learned her routine, knew she left for work at 5 in the morning, walked the half-mile to the diner because her car had died 2 months ago and she couldn't afford to fix it, knew she worked until 2, came home, ate a simple dinner alone, read for an hour by the window, then turned off the light at 9. It was a small life, a hard life, the kind of life his brother had died trying to prevent her from living. Marcus's phone buzzed. Dutch, you sitting outside her place again? How did you, because I know you Ironside, and because Roar saw you leaving town every night this week. A pause. Brother, she told you to leave her alone. Marcus typed back slowly. I am leaving her alone. She doesn't even know I'm here. That's called stalking in most jurisdictions. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at the dark window of Evelyn's trailer. What else am I supposed to do, Reaper? I promise, Wyatt. I can't just walk away. Dutch's response took longer this time. Come to the clubhouse tomorrow. We'll figure something out together. That's what brothers do. Marcus started his bike, rode home through the darkness, accompanied only by ghosts. The chapter meeting wasn't official. No votes, no formal business. Just 11 men around a table who'd bled together and wouldn't let one of their own bleed alone. Dutch stood at the head, but his voice was softer than usual. This wasn't orders. This was family. Ironside has a situation, and since his situation could become our situation, I think we all need to know the story. Marcus told them everything. Wyatt, Kuwait, the promise, the 20 years of searching, finding Evelyn, her rejection. When he finished, the room was silent. Bishop spoke first. So you found your brother's sister after 33 years, and she told you to back off because you were late. That's about the size of it. And now you're watching her house like some lovesick teenager. I'm protecting her. From what? Bishop leaned forward. Brother, I say this with respect, but the woman doesn't want your protection. She made that clear. Roar, usually quiet, cleared his throat. What if she needs it and doesn't know it? The room's energy shifted. This was what the Hells Angels did. Information gathering, situational awareness, understanding the battlefield before the shooting started. What do you mean? Marcus asked. Roar pulled out his phone, scrolled through messages. Ruby, the other waitress at the diner, she's friends with my wife. They talk. He looked up, and according to Ruby, Evelyn's got problems bigger than a broken down car. Dutch leaned forward. What kind of problems? The land Evelyn's trailer sits on, she's been renting it for 25 years from a guy named Caldwell. Old school handshake deal kind of arrangement. Roar paused. But Caldwell died 6 months ago. His son Brett inherited everything. And Brett's not interested in handshake deals. Let me guess, Knox said. He wants her out. Worse, he's trying to force her out, raise the rent 300%. When she couldn't pay, he started harassment, cut her power twice, dumped trash on her property, called the health department to inspect the diner trying to get her fired. Marcus's hands clenched on the table. Why? Because there's a developer, guy named Harlan Price, wants to buy up that whole section of Route 66, turn it into some luxury resort destination. Evelyn's property is the last holdout. Brett needs her gone to close the deal. Dutch looked at Marcus. And you knew none of this. She wouldn't talk to me long enough to tell me. Wade, the chapter's enforcer, cracked his knuckles. So we pay Brett a visit. Explain the situation. No. Dutch's voice carried absolute authority. We don't start wars. We don't need to fight. Not yet. He turned to Marcus. First we verify, then we assess, then we act intelligently. Dutch began giving orders, each man with a role, each role essential. Roar, dig into Brett Caldwell, financial situation, criminal record, known associates. Bishop, check out this developer, Harlan Price. I want to know if he's legitimate or if there's dirt. Knox, talk to your cousin at the county assessor's office. I want to know the legal status of Evelyn's tenancy. Orders given, accepted. This was how the Hells Angels operated. Not as a gang, but as a tactical unit, every man with purpose. And Ironside, Dutch's voice softened. You keep your distance from Evelyn for now. I know it goes against every instinct you have, but if we're going to help her, we can't spook her. She sees you or any of us coming around, she'll dig in harder. So what do? You wait, you watch, and when the time is right, you'll know. The information came back over the next 3 days. Each piece worse than the last. Brett Caldwell was 25 years old, a trust fund kid who'd burned through most of his inheritance in casinos in Las Vegas and Phoenix. His father's estate had been substantial, but Brett had debts, serious debts, the kind that came with interest rates that would make loan sharks blush. Harlan Price was a legitimate developer with a questionable reputation. 3 projects in the past decade, all profitable, all involving tactics that skirted the edge of legal harassment, pressure campaigns, strategic code violations, making life miserable until people sold cheap, and Evelyn's tenancy had never been formalized in writing. 25 years of paying rent on time, of being a model tenant, meant nothing in the eyes of the law. Brett could evict her with 30 days' notice. It gets worse, Knox reported. Brett filed eviction paperwork yesterday. She's got 28 days. Marcus felt something dark uncurl in his chest, something he had learned to control in the years since he had come home from war, but never quite eliminated. Where is he? Dutch put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Brother, don't. Where is he? The casino. Same one he goes to every Tuesday night. But if you go there and do what I think you're planning, you'll end up in jail. And Evelyn will be exactly where she started. Alone. Marcus stood, the chair scraped against concrete. I made a promise. And you'll keep it, but smart. Not with your fists. Not yet. The two men stared at each other. President and sergeant at arms. Old warrior and slightly less old warrior. Both knowing what the other was capable of. Finally, Marcus sat back down. Tell me the smart play. Dutch smiled. The smart play is we give her a choice. We present the information. We offer help. And we let her decide. How? We start with Ruby. She trusts Ruby. Ruby tells her what we found out about Brett. Plants the seed that maybe those bikers who came to the diner aren't what she thinks they are. Bishop added, and then we wait for Evelyn to make the next move. It was good strategy, sound tactics, everything Marcus had learned in the Marines and relearned in the Hells Angels. But every cell in his body screamed to act now, to ride to that casino and teach Brett Caldwell what happened when you threatened a Marine's family. Dutch seemed to read his mind. Patience is a weapon, Ironside, one you've used before. Use it now. Ruby found Evelyn in the diner kitchen before opening, crying over a piece of paper, the eviction notice. Evie, honey, what's wrong? Evelyn showed her the paper, her hand shaking. I have to be out in 4 weeks. I have nowhere to go. I've been saving, but it's not enough for first month last month and deposit anywhere else. And who's going to rent to a 78-year-old waitress anyway? Ruby pulled up a chair. This was the moment, the seed that needed planting. That biker who came in last week, the one who upset you. Evelyn's hand stilled. My husband knows some people who know him and says his name is Marcus Brennan, former Marine, served in Desert Storm with your brother. She paused, watching Evelyn's face. He's Hell's Angels, yeah, but not the kind you see on TV. His chapter does a lot of charity work. Veteran outreach. They raised $50,000 last year for homeless vets. Ruby took Evelyn's hand. And word is Marcus has been looking for you for 20 years. That he made a promise to your brother and never gave up. He told me that, Evelyn said quietly. Did you believe him? A long pause. I don't know what to believe anymore. Ruby squeezed her hand. Honey, I'm not saying trust him. I'm not saying let him help. I'm just saying maybe don't close all the doors. Not when you've got Brett Caldwell trying to throw you into the street. Evelyn looked at the eviction notice, at the 28 days that stood between her and homelessness. I've survived this long alone, she whispered. I know you have. You're the strongest woman I know. But surviving alone and asking for help when you need it, those aren't the same thing. After Ruby left, Evelyn sat in the empty diner as dawn broke over Route 66. She pulled out her wallet, found the $20 bill Marcus had left. His number was still written on the back in neat, precise handwriting. She stared at it for a long time. Then she put it back in her wallet, but she didn't throw it away. It was past midnight when Marcus's phone lit up. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up on the third ring. Mr. Brennan, a woman's voice, elderly, familiar. This is Evelyn Hartwell. Marcus sat up on his cot, wide awake in an instant. I saw what you did just now. I was watching from my window. He'd been more careful tonight, parked further away, but apparently not careful enough. Ma'am, Ruby told me about Brett, about the developer, about the eviction. Her voice was soft, tired, but something else too. Something that might have been hope. And about you, about the 20 years you spent looking for me. Marcus waited, barely breathing. It's all true, he said. Every word. I believe you. A pause. I'm sorry I didn't before. I was angry. At Wyatt for dying. At you for not being there. At myself for needing help. You don't have to apologize. Yes, I do, because you kept your promise. You're still keeping it. And her voice caught. I'm too proud and too stubborn. And I've been alone so long, I forgot what it feels like to have someone stand up for me. Marcus's throat tightened. What Wyatt did for me in Kuwait, taking that shrapnel that had my name on it, I can never repay that, but I can keep the promise I made to him. I can protect his sister, if you'll let me. Silence on the line, long enough that Marcus thought she'd hung up. Then, there's a bench outside the diner, tomorrow morning before I start my shift. 5 a.m. Can you meet me there? I'll be there. And Mr. Brennan, yes, ma'am, thank you for tonight, for all of it. She hung up before he could respond. Marcus sat on his bike by the side of the dark highway and felt something he hadn't felt since Caroline died. Like maybe the universe was giving him a second chance. Like maybe it wasn't too late after all. Marcus arrived at 4:45. The desert morning was cold and clear, stars still visible in the west while the eastern horizon began to glow. His breath fogged in the air as he waited on the bench. Wyatt's dog tags were in his pocket like a talisman. At exactly 5 a.m., Evelyn emerged from the diner side door. She wore her uniform, her silver hair pulled back, a cardigan against the cold. She looked older than she had in the diner that first day. Tired, but there was something else in her face now. Determination. She sat down on the bench beside him, leaving a respectful distance between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. They watched the sun begin to rise over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Finally, Evelyn broke the silence. Wyatt used to write me letters from Kuwait, every week like clockwork. He'd tell me about the desert, about the men in his unit. She paused. He wrote about you a lot. Marcus kept his eyes on the horizon. What did he say? That you were the best Marine he'd ever served with. That you had his back no matter what. That if anything happened to him, you'd take care of me like he would. She pulled out a folded piece of paper from her cardigan pocket, worn soft from being read 1,000 times. His last letter, written 3 days before he died. She handed it to Marcus. The paper felt fragile, like it might disintegrate in his hands. He unfolded it carefully. Wyatt's handwriting. Familiar. A ghost speaking from beyond the grave. Dot. If something happens to me, find Marcus Brennan. He's the best man I know. He'll take care of you. I made him promise. Trust him like you trust me. Love your brother Hawk. Marcus's vision blurred. He folded the letter carefully, handed it back. I'm sorry I was late, he said, his voice rough. I'm sorry for all of it. I know. Evelyn turned to face him, her blue eyes meeting his. And I'm sorry I turned you away. I was hurt, angry. I've been hurt and angry for so long, I forgot how to be anything else. She paused. Ruby says you and your brothers might be able to help. With Brett, with the eviction. We can. We will. Why? Her question was simple, direct. You don't know me. Wyatt's been gone 33 years. Why does this promise still matter to you? Marcus was quiet for a long time, searching for words that could explain what he'd carried all these years. In Kuwait, he finally said, Wyatt and I were pinned down by enemy fire. Rocket came in. Wyatt saw it before I did. He pushed me behind cover, took the blast himself. He paused, the memory as vivid as yesterday. Shrapnel tore through his neck, his chest. I held him while he died. It took 7 minutes of him bleeding out in my arms, and there was nothing I could do. His hands clenched together. In those 7 minutes, he didn't talk about himself, didn't ask me to tell his story or remember him as a hero. He talked about you, about how worried he was that you'd be alone, about how you'd taken care of him when your parents died, about how he'd promised to always protect you and he was breaking that promise. A tear ran down Evelyn's cheek. He made me swear I'd find you, that I'd protect you the way he couldn't. And I said yes, because Wyatt was my brother, not by blood, but by every other definition that matters. Marcus finally looked at her, not hiding the emotion in his eyes. And when your brother asks you for one thing with his dying breath, you don't get to quit just because it's hard. You don't get to give up just because 30 years pass. He paused. So that's why this promise still matters. Because Wyatt mattered. Because you matter. Because some debts can never be paid. Only honored every single day for the rest of my life. Evelyn was crying openly now. She reached out, hesitated, then took his hand. Hers was small and weathered. His was large and scarred. They fit together like pieces of a puzzle separated for too long. Tell me about him, she said. Tell me about Wyatt and Quaid. I only have the official report, the sanitized version. I want to know who he was at the end. So Marcus told her. He told her about Wyatt's laugh, loud and infectious. That could lighten the mood even in the darkest moments. About how Wyatt kept her picture in his helmet, looked at it every morning before patrols. About how Wyatt taught the younger Marines to play poker. Always let them win their first few hands before taking all their money with a grin. He told her about Wyatt's courage, how he'd volunteered for the most dangerous missions, how he'd carried a wounded Iraqi soldier to safety under fire. Because as Wyatt said, enemy or not, he's somebody's son. He told her about the last good day, 3 days before Wyatt died, when they'd gotten care packages from home, and Wyatt had shared his sister's homemade cookies with the entire unit. Even though he could have hoarded them, he said your cookies were the best thing he'd ever tasted. Said when he got home, he was going to eat nothing but your cookies for a week straight. Evelyn laughed through her tears. I sent him 6 dozen. I'd been saving butter and sugar for months. They sat there as the sun climbed higher, sharing stories of the man they'd both loved. The brother, the friend, the hero who'd saved Marcus's life and shaped Evelyn's childhood. And slowly, carefully, the wall between them began to crumble. By the time Evelyn had to start her shift, something had changed. The stranger with the Hells Angels patch was no longer a stranger. He was Marcus, Wyatt's brother, and maybe possibly hers too. The eviction, she said as she stood. I can't fight Brett in court. I don't have money for a lawyer. I don't have anywhere else to go. You won't fight him alone. My chapter, we've got resources, legal help, and we've got something Brett doesn't. What's that? We've got honor, we've got loyalty, and we don't abandon family. Marcus stood too. Let me talk to my brothers. We'll figure this out together. Evelyn nodded, then did something that surprised them both. She stepped forward and hugged him. Brief, awkward, unpracticed, but real. Thank you, Marcus, for keeping your promise, for not giving up, for being the man Wyatt believed you were. She went inside to start her shift, leaving Marcus standing in the parking lot as the desert morning warmed around him. He pulled out Wyatt's dog tags, held them up to catch the light. I found her, Hawk, he whispered, 33 years late, but I found her, and I swear to you I won't let her down again. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of sage and possibility. Somewhere Marcus chose to believe his brother was smiling. The plan was simple. The chapter would negotiate with Brett, offer him a deal he couldn't refuse, a 10-year lease for Evelyn at fair market rate. In exchange, they wouldn't report his harassment to law enforcement. Brett, desperate and in debt, agreed. For 48 hours, it seemed like the promise would be kept the easy way. Then Harlan Price, the developer, pulled his offer. You negotiated with bikers, Brett. You showed weakness. The deal's off. Brett lost the $500,000 that would have saved him, still had $200,000 in casino debt, and now had nothing to show for it but shame. Tuesday night, 11:47 p.m. Marcus was in his garage, working on the Harley's carburetor, trying not to think about how close they'd come to solving everything peacefully. His phone lit up. Ruby, Evie working late, closing alone. Brett just walked in with friends, all drunk. Come now. Marcus was moving before he finished reading. Grabbed his cut, his keys, hit speed dial for Dutch. Reaper, Ruby's diner, now. Brett's there drunk with friends, Evelyn's alone. On my way, I'll call the others. 7 Harleys roared to life across Flagstaff, converged on Route 66 like a gathering storm. Marcus rode hard, engine screaming, the distance collapsing under his wheels. Ruby's second text came through as he hit the main road. They have scissors. Hurry. Scissors, the word hit Marcus like a fist. Not violence, humiliation. Brett wanted to break Evelyn the way his father's death and his own failures had broken him. The neon sign of Ruby's diner flickered against the desert night, casting shadows that danced across the empty parking lot. Brett's truck was there, along with 2 others. Marcus killed his engine 50 yards out. The other 6 followed suit. 7 bikes went silent as one. Dutch's hand signals was clear. Slow approach, assess, then act. They walked the last distance, boots silent on gravel. Through the diner's windows, Marcus could see it all. Evelyn sat in the corner booth, her hands gripping the table's edge, strands of silver hair already scattered on the floor around her like fallen snow. Brett Caldwell held scissors, cutting her hair strand by strand, circling her like a predator savoring the kill. 3 young men stood behind him, Dylan, Cody, Trent, all in their early 20s, all drunk, and wearing the hollow bravado of boys trying to prove they were men by destroying something fragile. One more snip, old woman, Brett's voice carried through the glass. Maybe then you'll understand what happens when you make me look weak. Evelyn's eyes were dry but fierce. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of tears. Not yet. Ruby pressed herself against the far wall, phone clutched in shaking hands, too terrified to move. Marcus's hand went to the door handle. Dutch grabbed his wrist, shook his head, pointed to his watch, held up 5 fingers. Wait 5 seconds. Let them see us all at once. Maximum impact. Marcus nodded, forced himself to breathe, to think. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Then like thunder rolling across the high desert, they heard it. The deep, unmistakable rumble of Harley-Davidson engines starting in perfect synchronization. Not loud, just present. A reminder that 7 machines capable of violence sat outside, waiting. The engines died one by one, leaving a silence more terrifying than their roar. Brett's hand froze mid-cut. His eyes went to the window. 7 bikers stood in the parking lot, backlit by the neon sign, leather cuts, Hell's Angels patches, arms crossed, waiting. Boots hit pavement, heavy, deliberate. The footsteps of men who'd walk through hell and come out the other side. The diner door swung open. Marcus stepped across the threshold first. Behind him, Dutch, his gray beard braided like a Viking warrior. Then Roar, Bishop, Knox, Wade, Gunner. 7 men who'd earned their patches through blood and brotherhood. The Hells Angels had arrived. Marcus's eyes swept the room, took in every detail with trained precision. The scattered hair on the floor, Evelyn's face, the tears had finally come. Ruby cowering by the coffee maker, the 4 young men frozen, suddenly aware they'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. When Marcus spoke, his voice was calm, dangerously calm. The kind of calm that comes from a man who's faced death and learned that fear is a choice. Boys, I think you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Brett turned, trying to manufacture courage from the bottom of an empty bottle. The scissors shook in his hand. "Old man, get your gang out before—" "We're not a gang." Marcus took one step forward. Just one. But it was the step of a Marine who'd stormed bunkers, who'd carried wounded brothers through minefields, who'd kept promises when keeping them cost everything. "We're a brotherhood, and you just disrespected a woman under our watch." The words hung in the air like a sentence waiting to be carried out. Dylan, the youngest, started backing toward the kitchen. "Brett, man, I don't think—" "Shut up." Brett's voice cracked. He pointed the scissors at Marcus like a weapon. "You think you scare me? You gave me that lease, made me sign away $500,000, made me look like a fool. You think I'm just going to take that?" "I think you already did," Marcus said quietly. "You signed the lease. You made the right choice. And now you're here undoing it because you're drunk and ashamed, and you think humiliating a 78-year-old woman will make you feel like a man again." Brett's face went red. "You don't know anything about me." "I know everything about you." Marcus's voice was soft, but it carried through the diner like a prayer. "I know you're drowning in debt you can't pay. I know your father was a good man, and you're terrified you'll never measure up. I know you gamble because it's the only time you feel in control." He paused. "And I know that right now you're more scared than you've ever been in your life." The scissors wavered. "You want to know why?" Marcus took another step forward. Dutch and the others spread out. Not threatening, just present. A wall of leather and steel. "Because deep down you know your father would be ashamed of what you're doing right now. Cutting an old woman's hair because you're too weak to face your own failures." Brett's hand dropped slightly. His eyes were red, not just from alcohol. "My father, your father was a man of honor." It was Evelyn who spoke, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "He kept his word. He treated people with dignity. He built something that would have lasted if you hadn't torn it down." Brett spun toward her. Scissors raised again. "You don't get to talk about my father." Marcus moved fast, closed the distance in 2 strides. His hand clamped around Brett's wrist, not squeezing, not hurting, just holding, immovable. "Drop them." For a moment, Brett resisted. Then his fingers opened. The scissors clattered to the floor. Marcus released him. "Step back. Now we're going to talk like men. Not with weapons, not with threats, just the truth." He turned to the other 3. "You boys want to be part of this, or you want to walk away right now and pretend you were never here?" Cody was already moving toward the door. "I'm out. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hartwell. I'm so sorry." Trent followed, his voice breaking. "This wasn't supposed to. I didn't know he was going to—" That left Dylan, the youngest, maybe 19. He looked at Brett, then at Evelyn, then at the scissors on the floor. "My grandfather was a Marine," Dylan said quietly, tears streaming down his face. "He told me once that real men protect women. They don't hurt them." His voice broke. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I am so, so sorry." He walked out, shoulders shaking with sobs. Now it was just Brett and Trent. Marcus turned his full attention to Brett. "Your friends just left you. They made the smart choice. Now you've got one too. Walk out of here. Turn yourself into the sheriff. Face the consequences. Or stay and let this get worse." "Worse," Brett laughed, bitter and broken. "How could it get worse? I've lost everything. The deal with Price is dead. The debts are still there, and everyone in this town thinks I'm a piece of—" "You are a piece of garbage right now," Wade said from the back. "But you don't have to stay one." Brett looked at the enforcer, confused. Dutch stepped forward. "Son, I'm going to tell you something I learned a long time ago. Every man has a moment when he can choose who he's going to be. Usually comes when he's at his lowest, when he's lost everything and has nothing left but choices." He gestured to Evelyn. "You came here to hurt this woman because you're hurting. That's the coward's choice, the easy choice. But there's another choice. Apologize. Face the law. Start rebuilding. That's the hard choice, the man's choice. I can't, Brett whispered. I don't know how to fix this. You start, Marcus said, by telling Evelyn the truth. Not the drunk truth, not the angry truth, the real truth. Brett looked at Evelyn, really looked at her. At the woman who'd served coffee at this diner for 40 years, who'd lost her husband to war and her son to addiction, who'd survived everything life threw at her with quiet dignity, and something in him broke. He sank into the booth across from her, put his head in his hands, and wept. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. You never did anything to me. You were a good tenant. You paid every month for 25 years. And I tried to destroy you because I'm a failure. And I thought it would make me feel better. And it didn't. And now I've lost everything anyway. And I deserve it. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The words came out in a flood, confession and grief and shame all mixed together. Evelyn sat very still. Then slowly she reached across the table, put her weathered hand on Brett's. Brett, look at me. He raised his head. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked like a broken child. You hurt me tonight, Evelyn said quietly. You humiliated me, cut my hair like I was nothing. And I won't pretend that doesn't hurt. Brett's face crumpled again. But I also know what it's like to watch people you love destroy themselves. I watch my husband drink himself to death. I watch my son choose drugs over his family. And I know that pain makes people do terrible things. She paused. I don't deserve your forgiveness. No, you don't. Not yet. But you can earn it by making different choices. Starting right now. Trent, who'd been standing silently, suddenly spoke. Mrs. Hartwell, I'm sorry too. This was supposed to be, Brett said we were just going to scare you. But then he started cutting. And I didn't know what to do, and I should have stopped him, and I'm sorry. His voice broke on the last word. Tears ran down his face. 4 boys had walked into this diner. 4 boys were now crying. Marcus pulled out his phone, dialed. Sheriff Donovan, it's Marcus Brennan. I'm at Ruby's Diner. I've got 2 young men who want to turn themselves in for assault. Can you come down here? He hung up, looked at Brett and Trent. Sheriff's on his way. You're going to tell him everything, accept the consequences, and then you're going to spend however long it takes making this right. Brett nodded, too spent to argue. Sheriff Wade Donovan arrived 10 minutes later with 2 deputies. He took one look at the scene and sighed. Marcus, one of these days you're going to have a quiet Tuesday. Not today, apparently. The sheriff took Brett and Trent into custody, read them their rights. Brett went quietly, head down, still crying. Before they put him in the patrol, Evelyn walked over. Brett, he looked at her, eyes hollow. I meant what I said. You can earn forgiveness, but it starts with forgiving yourself. And that's the hardest part. He nodded once, then climbed into the car. As the sheriff drove away, Marcus helped Evelyn onto his Harley. You trust me, he asked. She smiled, tired but genuine. With my life. They rode through the desert night, Evelyn's arms around Marcus's waist, the wind in what remained of her hair. Behind them, the other 6 Harleys followed at a respectful distance, honor guard for a woman who had survived another battle. At her trailer, Marcus walked her to the door. Thank you, she said, for coming, for knowing I needed you. That's what family does. She touched his face gently. Wyatt chose well. So did he. You're stronger than he ever told me. She went inside. Marcus waited until her light came on, then rode home through the darkness. The promise 33 years old had finally been kept. Not in the way he'd imagined, not in the time he'd hoped, but kept nonetheless. 2 months passed like water through fingers, fast and slow at the same time. Brett Caldwell sat in county jail, sober for the first time in 3 years, attending mandatory counseling, writing letters to Evelyn that he never sent because he didn't know if he had the right. Marcus visited Evelyn 3 times a week, brought groceries when her paycheck ran short, fixed things around her trailer that had been broken for years, taught her to ride a smaller Harley he'd found at an estate sale and restored himself. They didn't talk much about Wyatt at first. The grief was still too fresh, too raw. Instead, they talked about small things, the weather, the diner, the way the desert looked at sunset. Building trust one conversation at a time. Dutch watched Marcus carefully during this time, saw something shifting in his brother, something loosening, like a man who'd carried a weight so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. But there was something else too, something darker that hadn't been resolved. The guilt was still there, buried deep, festering. The courtroom was small, packed with locals who'd come to see justice done. Brett Caldwell stood before Judge Patricia Morrison in an orange jumpsuit. He had lost 30 pounds. His eyes were clear. 2 months sober, 2 months of facing what he'd done without the buffer of alcohol or rage. His public defender stood beside him, a young woman named Sarah Mitchell who'd taken the case pro bono after hearing what the Hells Angels had done at the diner. "Mr. Caldwell," Judge Morrison said, her voice carrying the weight of 30 years on the bench, "you've committed serious crimes against Mrs. Hartwell, crimes that warrant significant jail time." Brett stood rigid, waiting. "However," the judge paused, "I've read the victim impact statement Mrs. Hartwell submitted. I've read your letters of remorse. I've also spoken with your therapist at the jail about your progress in treatment." She looked at Brett over her reading glasses. "I'm sentencing you to 18 months in county jail with credit for 2 months served. You'll be eligible for work release after 6 months if you maintain good behavior. Additionally, 5 years probation mandatory counseling and 500 hours of community service." Brett's lawyer whispered something to him. Brett shook his head, spoke clearly. "Your Honor, I accept the sentence. And I want to say, Mrs. Hartwell, I know you're here. I know you asked for leniency. I don't deserve it, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I can be better. Thank you." Evelyn sat in the front row, Marcus beside her. She nodded, didn't speak, but her eyes said enough. As they led Brett away, he looked at Marcus, mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Marcus nodded once. The debt was being paid. After the sentencing, Marcus drove Evelyn back to the diner. She had an afternoon shift. Life continued even when justice was being served. "He's going to be okay," Evelyn said as they pulled into the parking lot. "Brett, I think he's going to be okay. You believe in him. I believe in second chances. I have to. My son Michael, wherever he is, I have to believe he'll get his second chance too." Marcus helped her out of the truck. "And me, do you believe I'll get mine?" Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him. Saw something in his eyes she hadn't noticed before. Pain that went deeper than 33 years of searching. "Marcus, what are you carrying that you haven't told me?" He started to answer, stopped, shook his head. "Nothing. It's nothing." "Liar." Her voice was soft but firm. Wyatt used to do that too, carry things alone because he thought it made him strong. It just made him lonely. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I can't talk about it here, not now." "Then when, I don't know, maybe never." Evelyn touched his arm. "Whenever you're ready, I'll be here." She went inside, left Marcus standing in the parking lot with ghosts he couldn't shake and a confession he couldn't make. That night, Marcus sat alone in his garage. The Harley gleamed in the dim light. Wyatt's dog tags lay on the workbench. He'd been staring at them for an hour, trying to find the courage to do something he should have done 33 years ago. Admit the truth. His phone rang. "Dutch, Ironside you at the clubhouse tomorrow. We need to talk about the Hawk Fund proposal." "Yeah, I'll be there." A pause. "Brother, you sound like hell. What's going on?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "Marcus." Dutch rarely used his real name. When he did, it meant the conversation was serious. "I've known you 15 years. You're not fine. Talk to me." "Not on the phone." "Then meet me now, clubhouse, just you and me." Marcus arrived at the clubhouse 30 minutes later, Dutch was waiting outside, 2 beers in hand, not the cheap stuff. The good beer they saved for when brothers needed to talk. They sat on the steps. The desert night was cold and clear. Stars blazed overhead. Dutch didn't push, just waited. That was the thing about Dutch. He knew when to be quiet. Finally, Marcus spoke. I lied to Evelyn about how Wyatt died. Dutch took a long pull from his beer. What's the truth? In Kuwait, we were on patrol. I was calling in coordinates for an airstrike, made an error, transposed 2 numbers. The strike came in close, too close, forced us to relocate fast. Marcus's hands were shaking. He gripped the beer bottle to steady them. We were moving to a new position when the RPG came. I froze just for a second, saw it coming and my brain locked up. And Wyatt saw me freeze, saw the rocket, had time to run, to save himself. His voice broke, but he came back for me instead, pushed me out of the way, took the blast that should have killed us both. Dutch was quiet for a long moment. So Wyatt died saving you. Wyatt died because of my mistake. I screwed up the coordinates. I froze when the rocket came. He died cleaning up my failures. And you've been carrying that for 33 years. I don't deserve Evelyn's trust. I don't deserve any of this. Wyatt died because I wasn't good enough, fast enough, and I've spent 33 years lying about it, pretending he died some hero's death, when the truth is he died because of me. Dutch set down his beer, turned to face Marcus. Listen to me, brother, and listen good, because I'm only saying this once. His voice was firm, not angry, but carrying absolute authority. Wyatt made a choice. In that moment when the rocket came, he had options. Run, save himself, live. He chose to save you instead. That wasn't your failure. That was his heroism. But if I hadn't frozen, then maybe you both die. Maybe just you. Maybe nobody. We can play what if all day and it doesn't change the facts. Wyatt saw his brother in danger and he acted. That's who he was. That's what made him a hero. Dutch grabbed Marcus's shoulder. You've spent 33 years disrespecting his choice by calling it your fault. You've turned his sacrifice into your shame, and that's not honoring him. That's making his death about you. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Wyatt died so you could live. So live. Stop carrying guilt that isn't yours. Stop making his heroism about your failure. And for God's sake, tell Evelyn the truth. She deserves to know her brother died for something real. For friendship. For brotherhood. For love. Marcus sat there, the beer forgotten, Dutch's words echoing in his head. What if she hates me for it? Then she hates you, but at least you'll be honest. And maybe, just maybe, she'll understand that you're human. That her brother loved you enough to die for you, and that's worth more than a lie you've been telling yourself for 33 years. They sat in silence for a long time after that. 2 old warriors, 2 men who'd seen too much and carried too much, finding peace in the simple act of being brothers. Finally, Dutch spoke again. When are you going to tell her? I don't know. Soon. Don't wait too long, Ironside. Secrets have a way of poisoning things. Even good things. Marcus nodded, finished his beer, rode home through the darkness with Dutch's words ringing in his ears. The truth couldn't wait forever. 3 days later, Marcus pulled up to Evelyn's trailer. It was late, past 10. Her light was still on. He sat on his bike for 5 minutes, building courage, then walked to her door and knocked. Evelyn opened it, surprised but not afraid. Marcus, what's wrong? I need to tell you something. About Wyatt, about Kuwait, the real story. She stepped back. Let him in. The trailer was small, cramped, but clean, organized. A life built on making do with what you had. They sat at her small kitchen table, 2 cups of coffee between them, steam rising in the dim light. I lied to you, Marcus said. No preamble, no preparation, just the truth. About how Wyatt died, about that day in Kuwait. Evelyn's face went pale. What do you mean? I told you he saved me, pushed me out of the way of the RPG. That's true, but I didn't tell you why I needed saving. Marcus took a breath. This was harder than any firefight he'd ever been in. We were on patrol. I was the radio operator, calling in coordinates for an airstrike. I made an error, transposed two numbers. The strike came in close. Too close. We had to relocate fast. He paused. We were moving when the rocket came. I saw it, and I froze just for a second, but that second was all it took. Wyatt saw me freeze, saw the rocket. He had time to run, to save himself, but he came back for me instead. Evelyn's hands were shaking. She set down her coffee cup carefully. So Wyatt died because you made a mistake? Yes. And because you froze? Yes. Silence, heavy and suffocating. Why didn't you tell me this before? Marcus met her eyes. Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want you to know that your brother died cleaning up my failures. Because I've spent 33 years trying to make up for the fact that I wasn't good enough, fast enough, smart enough to keep him alive. Evelyn stood, walked to the window, stared out at the darkness. Marcus waited, ready for her anger, her rage, the rejection he'd been dreading for 33 years. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. I have a confession too. She turned to face him. When Wyatt enlisted, I was furious. We were orphans. All we had was each other. Our parents died when I was 16. Wyatt raised me, took care of me, and then he turned 18 and joined the Marines. Tears ran down her face. He promised me he wouldn't go to war. Promised he'd do his service and come home. Then Kuwait happened, and he volunteered. And I told him if he went, I'd never forgive him. Her voice broke. Those were my last words to my brother before he deployed. If you go, I'll never forgive you. And he went anyway. And when he died, she couldn't continue, just stood there, sobbing. Marcus stood, crossed to her, put his arms around her. When he died, she finally continued, a part of me was relieved because I didn't have to live in fear anymore. Didn't have to wait for the phone call, the knock on the door. And then I hated myself for feeling relieved. And I've carried that guilt for 33 years. They held each other, two people who'd been carrying the same weight from different sides. Wyatt made his choice, Marcus said quietly. He chose to save me. That wasn't because of my failure. That was because he was a good man who loved his brothers. And he chose to go to Kuwait, Evelyn whispered. He chose to serve. That wasn't breaking his promise to me. That was keeping a bigger promise, to his country, to his duty. She pulled back, looked at Marcus. We've both been carrying guilt that isn't ours. Wyatt didn't die because of your mistake. He died because he was a hero, and he didn't die breaking his promise to me. He died keeping promises that mattered more. Marcus felt something loosening in his chest, something that had been tight for 33 years. I don't know how to let it go. Neither do I, but maybe we start by forgiving ourselves and forgiving each other and honoring Wyatt by living the way he'd want us to, not in guilt, but in gratitude. She took his hands. You kept your promise to him, Marcus. You found me. You protected me. And now we get to live. For him, for us, for all the days he didn't get. They stood there in the dim light of her trailer, two people finding peace in the simple act of telling the truth. Outside, the desert night was cold and clear. Stars blazed overhead, indifferent and eternal. But inside, two souls who'd been lost for 33 years had finally found their way home. The Hells Angel. Arizona chapter met 3 days after Marcus's confession to Evelyn. Dutch called it. Full attendance required. Brothers, Dutch began, we've been talking about how to honor Wyatt Sullivan, the man whose death brought Ironside to us, the man whose promise kept our brothers searching for 33 years. He paused. I propose we create the Hawk Fund, a veteran outreach program, specifically for brothers coming home from deployment with nowhere to go, no family, no support. We help them with rent, jobs, counseling, whatever they need to transition back to civilian life. Bishop spoke up. Funded how? Chapter fundraisers, runs, poker tournaments. We've done it before. We can do it again. Knox nodded. I'm in. How much we talking? Start with 50,000. Build from there. First priority, find brothers who need help. Second priority, create sustainable support systems. Dutch looked at Marcus. Ironside, you want to run it? Marcus felt his throat tighten. I'd be honored. Then it's yours, brother. The Hawk Fund, named after a man who died protecting his brothers, run by a man who never stopped honoring that sacrifice. Vote was unanimous. 11 hands raised. 11 voices saying yes. The Hawk Fund was born. 2 weeks later, opportunity knocked in an unexpected way. Ruby's Diner's owner, Old Man Patterson, was retiring, moving to Florida to be near his daughter. The diner was for sale. Evelyn would lose her job, and with no car and no savings, she'd have nowhere else to go. Dutch made a proposal to the chapter. The Hawk Fund's first project, we buy the diner, make Evelyn owner-operator, Ruby stays as partner, we rename it Hawk's Nest Diner. Veterans eat free, always. That's not cheap, Bishop pointed out. Patterson's asking $200,000. Then we raise it, we sell bikes, we take loans, we call in favors, we make it happen. Knox smiled. Old Man Patterson is my wife's uncle. I think I can talk him down to 150. And I've got a friend at the credit union, Rohr added, can get us a business loan with the chapter as co-signers. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of negotiations, paperwork, fundraisers, calling in every favor and connection they had. But on a Tuesday morning in late August, Dutch handed Evelyn the keys to Hawk's Nest Diner. She stood there, keys in her shaking hands, unable to speak. It's yours, Dutch said gently, free and clear, the loan's in the chapter's name. You just run it, feed people, take care of veterans, honor your brother. Evelyn looked at Marcus, then at the 11 men who'd made this possible. Why would you do this for me? Marcus answered. Because Wyatt was our brother, and that makes you family, and we take care of family. She broke down, crying, but this time they were tears of joy, of disbelief, of hope. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank us. Just make Wyatt proud. The grand opening was set for 6 months later, February 2025, 34 years to the day after Wyatt died in Kuwait. Time to prepare, to renovate, to build something worthy of the name it would carry. Brett Caldwell was released on work release in October, 8 months sober, quieter, humbler. He approached Evelyn with a simple request. Mrs. Hartwell, I don't deserve to ask this, but I need a job, and I need to make amends. Would you let me work for you? Evelyn looked at the young man who'd cut her hair, who'd humiliated her, who'd broken down crying and faced his failures. Can you cook? Brett nodded. My dad taught me before he died. Then you can work the grill, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., minimum wage to start. You show up sober, you show up on time, you treat people with respect. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am, I swear it. Then welcome to Hawk's Nest. The day of the grand opening arrived cold and clear. The kind of winter morning Arizona did best. Crisp air, blue sky, sun just beginning to warm the desert. 200 people gathered in the parking lot, veterans in their dress uniforms, Hells Angels from 3 states, locals who'd been coming to the diner for decades, all there to witness something special. The diner had been transformed. Fresh paint, new booths, but the soul remained. The counter where Evelyn had served coffee for 40 years. The photographs on the wall now including Wyatt in his dress blues, Robert in his Army uniform, and a new photo of Marcus and Evelyn at the memorial bench, smiling like the family they'd become. Above the door, a new sign, hand-painted, proud, Hawk's Nest Diner. Where everybody's family below it, a smaller sign. In memory of Sergeant Wyatt Hawk Sullivan, USMC, 1964 to 1991, and a third sign simple and direct, veterans eat free, always. Dutch stood on the steps. The crowd quieted. Brothers, sisters, friends, his voice carried across the parking lot. We're here today to honor a man who gave his life for his country and for his brothers. Sergeant Wyatt Sullivan died in Kuwait in 1991, saving the life of his fellow Marine Marcus Brennan. He turned to Evelyn. Wyatt made Marcus promise to protect you. It took 33 years, but Marcus kept that promise. And in doing so, he brought all of us together, created a family where there was none, built something that will outlast all of us. Dutch held up a folded flag, the same flag that had been draped over Wyatt's coffin 34 years ago, finally returned from Arlington at Evelyn's request. This flag represents sacrifice, honor, the cost of freedom. And today it finds its home here, at Hawk's Nest, where we'll remember, where we'll honor, where we'll take care of our own. He handed the flag to Evelyn. She took it with trembling hands, pressed it to her chest. Wyatt, she said, her voice soft but clear, I miss you every day. But today I feel like you're here, in every person who came, in every life you touched, in Marcus who loved you enough to never give up. She turned to the crowd. This diner has been my life for 40 years, but it was just survival. Today it becomes something more, a place where veterans find family, where the lost find home, where promises are kept. Applause rang out, genuine and warm. The crowd parted. Marcus and Evelyn walked forward together, their steps synchronized like they'd been walking side by side for decades instead of months. Together they unveiled a brass plaque beside the door. Family isn't who you're born to, it's who you die for. Sergeant Wyatt Sullivan, USMC, the doors opened. Inside the place gleamed, ready for life, ready for purpose. Behind the counter working the grill was Brett Caldwell, 10 months sober, wearing an apron that read "Second chances start here." Ruby stood beside him, ready to pour coffee, to serve pie, to welcome people home. The first customer walked in, a young Marine, 22 years old. Name tag read Morrison, Josh Morrison, fresh back from Afghanistan. Eyes carrying the 1,000-yard stare Marcus knew too well. Josh stood in the doorway, lost, uncertain. Evelyn walked up to him, smiled. Welcome to Hawk's Nest, son. Breakfast is on the house for all who served. Josh's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, ma'am. I didn't know where else to go. Marcus appeared beside him, put a hand on his shoulder. You're home now, brother. They led Josh to the counter. Brett served him eggs, bacon, hash browns. The Hawk Special, named after a man who died protecting people he'd never met. Josh ate slowly, looking around at the photographs, the flags, the patches on walls, the faces of people who understood. This place, he said quietly, it feels like family. That's because it is, Evelyn replied. That's exactly what it is. As the day went on, more veterans came, some alone, some with families, all welcomed, all fed, all given the same message. You're not alone. You're home. You're family. That evening, as the sun began to set, Marcus and Evelyn sat on the memorial bench outside, watching the desert turn gold and orange and purple. Think he's watching? Evelyn asked. I know he is. She turned to him, a soft smile on her weathered face. You know what's strange? For 33 years, I carried so much anger. At Wyatt for leaving, at you for not coming, at myself for needing anyone at all. Marcus squeezed her hand. And now I understand. He didn't break his promise to me. He kept a bigger promise. To protect people who couldn't protect themselves, including you. She smiled. And he gave me you. He gave me family when I thought I'd lost everything. So maybe his promise to me wasn't about staying alive. Maybe it was about making sure I'd never be alone. Marcus felt tears on his face, the first real tears he had cried since Kuwait. He saved me twice, once with his body, once with his promise. And I finally understand I don't have to earn that. I just have to honor it. They embraced. Not romantic, family, brother and sister through Wyatt's blood and their shared journey. Behind them, the diner glowed with life, laughter, conversation, the sound of healing happening one meal at a time. Evelyn pulled back, wiped her eyes. You know, I learned to ride that Harley you got me. Been practicing. I know, Roar told me you're pretty good. Race you to the canyon. Marcus smiled. You're on. They walked to their bikes. Evelyn's was smaller, lighter, but she handled it with growing confidence. They kicked them to life. The engines roared in harmony, and together they rode into the Arizona sunset. Route 66 stretching behind them like a ribbon connecting past to future. The camera pulled back, two motorcycles on an empty highway, the diner behind them full of life, 7 more Harleys parked outside like sentinels. Inside, Brett flipped burgers with quiet concentration. Ruby poured coffee with practiced ease. Josh sat at the counter talking with another vet, finding connection, finding hope. On the wall, Wyatt's photograph smiled down. Forever young, forever watching over the family he'd created with his sacrifice. And in the window, catching the last rays of sunset, hung Wyatt's dog tags. The camera zoomed slowly, revealing the inscription on the front. Sullivan Wyatt J, 3674-4281, OUSMC Christian. Then the tags flipped, showing the backside. New engraving freshly done. Promise kept 2025 family found. The sun sank below the horizon. Stars began to appear, ancient and indifferent. But on Route 66 in a small diner called Hawk's Nest, promises were being kept. Lives were being rebuilt. And family was being forged from the ashes of sacrifice. Then one more scene. Brett in the kitchen, teaching Josh how to work the grill. Their conversation quiet but meaningful. Josh, why'd you do it? Why'd Mrs. Hartwell give you a second chance after what you did? Brett paused, spatula in hand, because she understands something I'm still learning. That people aren't defined by their worst moment. They're defined by what they do after. He flipped a burger with practiced precision. This place, it's not just about food. It's about second chances for vets, for people like me, for anyone who needs family. Josh nodded. I needed this. After Afghanistan, I didn't know where I belonged anymore. Brett put down the spatula, looked at the young Marine. You belong here, brother. We all do. That's what Sergeant Sullivan understood. That's what his promise was really about. Not protecting one person, but creating a place where the lost could find home. They worked in comfortable silence after that. Two men from different generations, different wars, different failures, but both finding redemption in the simple act of feeding people who needed to be fed. Outside, Marcus and Evelyn's motorcycles disappeared into the distance, two small lights in the vast darkness of the desert. But in their wake, they left something that would outlast them both. A promise kept, a family forged, a home for those who'd lost their way. And in the window of Hawk's Nest Diner, dog tags caught the moonlight. A memorial, a reminder, a testament to the truth that some promises are worth keeping, no matter how long they take, no matter how hard the road. Because in the end, family isn't about blood. It's about who you die for and who die for you. The desert wind whispered through the sage, carrying with it the ghosts of those who'd sacrificed, the memories of those who'd kept faith, the hope of those who'd never given up. And somewhere in whatever place heroes go when their work on earth is done, Wyatt Sullivan smiled. His promise had been kept. His family had been found. His legacy would endure, not in medals or monuments, but in the simple act of a waitress serving coffee to a lost veteran, a reformed addict teaching a broken soldier how to cook, a brother keeping watch over his brother's sister. That was the real memorial. That was the true honor. That was love.